Good morning.
Morning.
We are starting to do SITREP videos again. For anyone who has seen these in the past, we did them in after the COVID shutdown, where we interviewed our hikers, supporters, and sponsors. And so we're going to start it off again this year. And our first one is going to be with Sam, who hiked the Appalachian Trail with us. And first of all, congratulations on
Thank you.
completing the trail very,
Yeah.
very recently. And
Yep.
when you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Sam Brasfield, retired from the Navy. I was an EOD officer. Retired in March of 25, at the end of March, and I started the trail March 18th. So it was pretty cool. Started the trail on active duty. But I was an EOD officer, and like you said, Appalachian Trail 2025.
Awesome. So how did you hear about War Expeditions?
So I had talked about doing the Appalachian Trail for many years. My wife and I've been married for a little over 27 years. She's heard me talk about it ever since we were together. So we were living in Europe last, before I came back to the States. I was talking about doing it, and she was like, well, when you retire, you just need to go like the Appalachian Trail. And I'm like, well, that could take like 6 months. And she's like, yeah, you should do it. I'm like, all right, we'll see. And then we got back to the States. I was finishing up another job and doing all my planning for retirement. And then March, not this past March, but March, C 24, um, as Ren says, Facebook knows what you're thinking. Like, it came up, Warrior Expeditions, I guess, is when you guys were starting the group, year before this last. And so I saw it and I was like, check this out. So I emailed you guys and said, hey, how do I apply for this? You guys sent me an email, said, we'll take applications in the fall and go from there. So I put a little tickler on my calendar, and around that time I did get an email and I filled out the application. So I found out about it on Facebook. Had never heard about it from anybody else. Yeah. So
Awesome. So your wife was kind of catalyst behind a lot of this, huh? Really pushed you to
she
do it.
held me accountable. She did. Yeah. I don't know what that says about her wanting me to get out of the house, but really, she was very supportive. I got to see her along the way. I mean, she came to Irwin for Easter with my boys, and we met, and then I came home to see her and my boys when my youngest boy graduated high school. So I took like 4 days off the trail, and then she took me back to Virginia where I'd gotten off and flat packed me for a few days in Virginia. And then she also came up to Maine and picked me up. She didn't do any of the hiking with me, but she picked me up, and then we drove back. It took our time getting back, which was cool because we got to visit a lot of people. I showed her some places. We even stayed with one of the community supporters on the way back, took them out to eat, which was a lot of fun. So yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it's really cool because with military spouses, being in the military and then being a military spouse, like you're used to that time away and you realize that like it is necessary sometimes, like not because you don't like the person that you're with, but
Right.
because one, you want them to have an experience without you, because it actually does. I feel like it actually does help your relationship, but then
Yeah.
you're also sharing that experience with her, and I think that's really cool.
That's right. Yeah.
That's really
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sorry, we digressed.
Yeah.
But so generalize, and if you have a story to assist us, what was it like to hike the Appalachian Trail?
So first of all, it was not all, sunshine and butterflies. Um, it was actually, I've done a lot of very hard things in my life. I enjoy hard things, but it was probably one of the, if not the hardest thing I've done, just because it was repetitive over and over and over again. And some of the you know, just weather, mosquitoes, just all sorts of stuff. And I could tell tons of stories about, you know, great things that I experienced on the trail, as well as difficult times. But some of the difficult times actually are some of the most memorable, right?
Yeah.
I caught the norovirus in Virginia right around the Triple Crown, and ended up waking up at midnight with fever and chills and diarrhea, and ended up packing out. Like, I packed up my stuff. I knew it was going to be raining the next day. I'd heard that thunderstorms were coming. I was like, well, I better just get on. on the trail and get going to get to Daleville. And I woke up, packed up my tent. It was hard because I had no energy. I mean, I was just spent, but I packed everything up and started hiking around 2 in the morning. And I don't know if you remember that portion from basically just south or just north of McCaffey Knob. I ended up doing the Triple Crown in 24 hours because I hiked that morning. I hiked to Tinker Cliffs, but I wasn't enjoying it. I would walk like 30 minutes, sit down, and about pass out, and I was just hurting. I mean, it was under headlight. But I ended up making it to Daleville probably around 2 the next day. I mean, it took me forever. It was like, I think 16, 17 miles I had to go to get there,
Oh,
and ended up being in a hotel for a few days, which, I recovered. But looking back on that, I knew, like, man, if I could hike out 16 miles out of the woods under those conditions, I can keep pressing. And I reflected on that many times throughout the rest of the trail when it was tough. So to answer your question, what it was like, it was tough, but very rewarding. Some other things that really stood out is things that I enjoyed was just meeting all the other warriors. As you know, Michelle, when you get on the trail, you meet these groups of people that have met along the way. They call them families, and
mhm.
they didn't start together. Maybe one or two start together, but then there's a group of 6, 8, 10, and they're all buddies. And I met a lot of those folks, but it's almost like we had that starting off right off the bat, even though we were only required to hike together for the first, 4 days.
Mhm.
After that, there was no expectation for us to hike together, but I hiked with a lot of the guys for much of the distance. I'd say a third of the time I was by myself because of different reasons. I would leave the trail and come back. I'd be behind somebody or get ahead of somebody. But overall, you know, back to the question, it was just great being around those guys that I, instantly had a bond with. Really enjoyed their company, talk to them, as much as possible. Although a lot of times on the trail, we would spread out during the day, but we would always be together at night or in the evenings. And anyway, so that was very enjoyable. Another thing that was really a benefit, and we were envious of all the other free hikers, the community supporters. Like, I mean, first of all, they were phenomenal, and I could tell stories about some of them if you want me to, but it's kind of hard to tell a story about one and not tell about all of them because they were all
Yeah.
phenomenal. Um, but I have a lot of good memories. But many times you'd be like, "Yeah, I'm going to meet with these people. Somebody's going to pick me up here at the trailhead." You tell another through hiker, and they're like, "What?" And most of the hikers knew about Warrior Expeditions, either from hearing about it from Sherpa, because as I call Dave Freeman Sherpa, the trail mayor, because anybody, you tell somebody, yeah, I'm with Warrior Expeditions, like, oh, you know Sherpa? Well, yeah, of course I know Sherpa, because he was spreading the gospel, if you will, about Warrior Expeditions with everybody he met, doing interviews.
Oh, that's
So,
fantastic.
so it was pretty cool. But you would tell somebody you're with Warrior Expeditions, and they were like, or you're meeting a community supporter, and they were just so envious, like, wow, I wish I had that. And they were always, anyway, very supportive and encouraging. So
Yeah.
it was a
No,
great experience.
I mean, I did the trail 10 years ago now, and I still talk to some of the supporters and can tell you the worst of times in my Noro experience. And yeah, that stuff sticks with you. It sticks with you for a very long time. You hiked a lot further than I did with Noro. I didn't hike as far as you did, but I did hike a little bit, and that was enough. So I can only imagine what you went through for that. Which,
Oh, it
well,
was like, I just got to make another half a mile.
okay, so what was your favorite part? Like, if you had to like think back and you're like, there's just this one thing, and I know there's so many good parts of the trail too, but like that like story you want to tell everybody that like this was the best part of the trail.
But I would say that my favorite section was definitely New Hampshire, and Maine was by far my best section. And unfortunately, but fortunately, I didn't get to finish with any of the other warriors because my younger son also went through Navy basic training. So I got off the trail. I was hiking with Sherpa and Grouse, towards the end, and we were all tracking to finish together. But my kid was graduating from Great Lakes, so my wife and I surprised him and flew to Chicago and saw him graduate. So I got off the trail in New Hampshire. So they got a few days ahead of me. All that to say, but I did have for the 100 Mile Wilderness and the summit to Katahdin. I had my brother-in-law, so my wife's brother, who's a good friend of mine, and a longtime Navy buddy that I've known since I became an officer. We were junior officers together 27, 28 years ago. Um, Came to Maine and hiked the 100 Mile Wilderness and Katahdin with me, and that was awesome. We had a good
Very
time.
cool.
Now it was pretty wild. I've been hiking for 5 months, and they're both studs. I mean, they're in really good shape. Pete lives in Montana and is in really good shape, but he had been hiking for 5 months. And then Cal, my brother-in-law, lives up in North Alabama, and he runs and he's in good shape, but it's different, as you well know. Like I've been hiking,
Mhm.
so I was a little, I was a little optimistic on our mileage, but we had time hacks, so I really wanted to it worked out this way, and I don't think I planned this other than close to the end. But August 26th was the anniversary that I came in the Navy in 1988. So August 26th was a good day. I was like, hey, we should shoot for summiting Katahdin on my anniversary date, which is August 26th. They're like, all right, cool. So I planned the route for. I met them in Momsen, and we hiked basically all the way to Katahdin in 6 days. So 100 and was that 115, 120 miles,
Yeah.
and in some rough sections,
Yeah.
very rough section. But I'll tell you, back to the community supporters, and I guess I probably should. And I hate to shout out one group of supporters because I could say something about all of them, but Susan Buck Buchanan. Wow. I mean, they laid out the red carpet for us. And I just told Susan Buck, I know they're not supposed to support other people. And I said, hey, I need to find a place to stay with me and my brother-in-law. And she's like, no, we will house them. You're by yourself. We have room. We will house them. And I'm like, nah, it's
Mhm.
okay. She said, no, just I was in New Hampshire, towards the end of New Hampshire then. And she's like, just give me their email addresses and I'll coordinate everything. And
Yep.
she
That sounds about
literally
right.
helped them out, set up a ride from the airport for them. And anyway, we were with them for a couple of days. So they got to know Susan Buck really well. And that was a lot of fun. And then we hiked 5 days to Baxter, and then we got to Baxter, which is 100 plus miles, and we got to Baxter, and the weather was getting bad. So we had planned we built in to Summit on the 25th in case of weather, and then weather was bad on the 25th. So we I had another buddy that I served with in the Navy who's from Maine and had said, "Hey, I want to come up and summit Katahdin with you." He had never hiked Katahdin, and he lives down in South Florida. So he came up, and timing just worked out perfect. I mean, everything on the trail ended up working perfect timing wise, even when you don't fully plan it. But he
Mhm.
came up, and he was a day early, so he came and picked us up at Baxter, took us back to the Airbnb. We spent the 25th, while it was pouring down rain in an Airbnb, and then the next morning, that night, my wife got there. She dropped us off, and we hiked the summit with me, my brother-in-law Cal, my buddy Pete, and then my buddy Matt Coombs, who's from Maine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you've been home for about 6 weeks. How do you think your experience on the trail changed you? I mean, I know it's still kind of early, but like, do
yeah,
you have that feeling? Do you feel like it changed your outlook or anything like that?
yeah, definitely. So first of all, like, being a naval officer, I've been attached to two cell phones for decades. And so I intentionally did not use my phone for the first, I think it was a little over a month, maybe 6 weeks, other than for far out. And then I would check in with my wife every evening, send her a text, say, hey, but we didn't really talk much over on the phone. We no hardly any phone calls. Sometimes when we would pull into town for resupply, I would chat with her, but I literally didn't use any social media. I didn't listen to podcasts, music, nothing. I just like disconnected. And I think there was a lot of value in that. As we were talked about, and as you know, a lot of times on the trail, you're walking, you talk to people, but then you're not typically with people. You spread out, you stop to use the
Yeah.
bathroom, people get ahead, and you're by yourself. And the quietness and the walking, it just cleared my mind. So I've struggled with, focus. I struggle with just being, you know, anxious on like data input. And I actually read a book. It's been a couple years ago, right? When I'm like feeding in data, and I'm listening to this book, and it was called Comfort Crisis, about written by a guy named Michael Easter, and he talks about how in this day and age, we're so bombarded by information and stuff that we never get a time just to be quote bored. And although I was never bored in the woods, my mind could think, and I wasn't just always focused on data coming in, thinking about what I need to tell people, what I need to say, what I need to do. It was just basically calmness and thinking, and it really cleared my brain. Of course, after that 6 weeks, I did start listening to podcasts, which also helped me think about stuff. Listen to music every morning. Um, Sherpa and a few of us that hike, we got in a routine to listen to this little devotion that he got. We'd start walking, he'd be like, "All right, you ready to listen to the devotion?" We listened to it. So we did do that later on, but early on it was just like quietness and walking. And I think, there's a lot of value in not just the quietness, but the repetitive motion of just hiking, your feet on the trail and quietness. And anyway, that really helped me. Um, the other thing that I think about, I've already mentioned numerous times, is all the interactions with the community supporters, other through hikers, and then the other warriors, other combat vets. Um, so with community supporters, I've already talked about that a little bit. They're phenomenal. Meeting people from all walks of life doing it, that was really cool. And there's all sorts of stories about connections of people I met, and anyway, it was really cool. But kind of what I want to focus on was the interactions with the other. Something that changed me is interactions with the other warriors. Um, Kind of a not a real wide span of ages, but we did have two younger guys, Young Guns and Ricky Wags. They were a lot younger than the rest of us. All the rest of us were like retirees and older, gray haired. So my first like few weeks, I would say probably 3 weeks, I hung back and hiked with Ricky Wags and Keegan, named him Young Guns. Um, and because I had the least in common with them in my mind. But I really enjoyed getting to know both those guys. Um, Learned tons from them, things that I hadn't thought about. We talked about all sorts of stuff. But it was pretty wild. But like some of the struggles I've had in the military, difficult times I've had in the military, we had connections on that I didn't think we would have. Being a relatively senior guy when I retired, and the times when I had those problems, those challenges, I was a junior officer, whereas Ricky and Keegan were young soldiers, young, grunts. And but when we had these discussions, and I'm not going to give details because it doesn't really matter. But the point is like I could really relate with the challenges that they had that I had. So anyway, that was, and I'm
Yeah.
reflecting on that now and what's going forward, what I'm going to do next. And I have a number of options, but I'm not rushing into anything because I'm like, I'm not in a hurry, I'm not going to starve. I'm okay.
Mhm.
But I'm back to your question on changes. It's really made me reflect on some of that stuff. So,
For some reason, the trail, and the longer you're on trail, I feel like the more you feel this, but even initially, there's something about walking and walking with someone and talking and I think it's because you're not face to face.
mm,
Like when you're walking and you're telling your story. I hiked with my brother on the Mountain Sea Trail, and he walked in front of me and he just opened up and told me all these things. And I was just like, wow, he was in the Marine Corps. And I was like, wow, this is not something that if we were sitting down, even having a beer, we'd both be like, yeah, let's talk about this. But
right.
it's just like, it's like you're talking to yourself in a way. And so then you're sharing with someone else, and you guys bonding. And yeah, it's crazy. And like I said, you've only been out off the trail for 6 weeks and you're already, thinking about all this stuff. So I can only imagine like how much more that's going to process and,
Yeah.
over the next couple of years and stuff. So yeah. So do you have anything else to add? I mean,
I mean,
but
yeah, I would just close it up with saying, retiring and then doing this, I think should be mandatory for retirees. Not necessarily hiking the Appalachian Trail, but something like that. That's right.
Mhm.
Because the way I looked at it, being a Navy diver, and I don't know how much you understand about diving and decompression, but when you decompress, so you don't get the bends, it's not about getting nitrogen out of your system. It's about getting the concentration of the nitrogen out of your system, so it doesn't give you the bends. The bubbles coming out of solutions. It's technical, but point is it's parallel, I think, with doing something like this for veterans. Like, you need to have some period of time where you do something. Most people would say, I'm not going to hike Appalachian Trail. That's stupid. But whatever makes you tick. But some time period, whether it's 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, it should be mandatory, because in the military we do all this, as I call it, institutionalization, schools, training, all this stuff to come in the military. And then we, get a few days course, and they're like, at the very least, and then they kick you out, and you're done. And so I really appreciate Warrior Expeditions. I think Sean's vision on this when he started is spot on, man. And then I really like it how you guys aren't just doing the hike now; you're doing the bike and the canoe or kayak. Because once again, everybody's not going to want to hike the Appalachian Trail, but I think something like this, it should be mandatory for all vets. And I think the uh, benefit cost analysis would say it would benefit all veterans to do something like this. Anyway, so I really appreciate you, Sarah, Sean, the rest of the staff that contribute to this. I think it's phenomenal. I will do whatever thing I can to support you guys. You just let me know. Um,
We
so,
appreciate
as far as what I'm doing next, I don't know, but like, I feel like almost like a calling to contribute some way, and not just writing a check every month, but like, and I have no problem. I want to contribute, but I think there's benefit to this, and I think all veterans should get the experience, or the opportunity, I should say, to experience something like this. So thanks, Michelle.
Yeah, no, and we appreciate too. And I know that your next endeavors are going to involve veterans. So just
Right.
any help with veterans is huge. So we
That's right.
appreciate that too.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
yeah, thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Yes, ma'am. Enjoyed it.
All right, I will hopefully talk to you soon.
Okay. All right.